nobody taught me like all the things that you need to get into your body. You just
you ate like what you like.
Well, and in the modern days, it's not even that it's like a eat what you like anymore. It's just that all the stuff that tastes good. Yeah. They're like, ooh, my mouth is watering to the taste of it, and that's the only good thing you get out of it. Is like it's like a mouth addiction, you know. You're like, well, I just want to taste good things, when actually, like, yeah, vegetables and Brussels sprouts and broccoli and all this different stuff might taste a little worse, but man, the benefits you get from just putting it in your body is like so beneficial. And that's where I just I picked up on that in the last few years as an adult, and it pisses me off that nobody showed us this. Like,
how old are you, if you don't mind me
25. I'm 25.
Okay, I'm 28, and yeah, I mean, it's so interesting to me because my mom actually got her associates in environmental engineering and environmental science. So she knew this shit, you know, like, and we were vegan at one point, we were Rastafarian at one point, like, and that's where a lot of what I did was so different, because my background's in research, like, you know, I've just always been super inquisitive, and when I started my recovery, because I was prescribed a ton of pharmaceuticals and stuff, and so I dove deep into like what is the science behind these plants and the nutrients, like you were talking about, because I didn't know. And at the time, like, we ate like shit. We ate out a lot, and that's the thing that I didn't realize.
It's cheap too.
And I thought eating out, you're getting better quality food, but you're not. It's all frozen shit.
Like, even the mom and pops places you go to, like they're buying it from the same companies.
They're buying from like GFS and
because
shit.
It's cheaper and it's more affordable, so they can run their businesses. And it's just it's a method that's been created that is not like the referred.
And it's so funny because my partner and I, Tommy, we refer to it a lot like as the Matrix and stuff. And I know like that gets thrown around, and because that's what it feels like. It's because like you just don't have these conversations about what nutrients. I mean, I remember doing the food pyramid and stuff in school.
Yeah, like, I was gonna refer to that. Yeah.
What? Like,
what's that, you know?
And then you would go to lunch and you got Little Debbie snacks and chicken sandwiches. Like, fried chicken sandwiches.
All right. We'll do a little countdown and then we'll rock into it.
Okay.
3. You talking to me? I'm talking to you. And this is Talking to Me, Talking to You. And I am joined by a new friend of mine, Lea Moore.
Hello.
Hello. Thank you for coming out and doing this.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, no, I appreciate you. Cause it's really kind of cool how it all happened. You just kind of messaged me and you're like, hey, so I was referred to a friend, Sarah Gorak. Sarah, thank you.
Yep, shout out.
Yeah, she's a great person. And she, you know, was like, oh, hey, I'm assuming she's like, oh, my friend's got this podcast and blah, 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 blah. And then you just messaged me, which I've had 2 people now that on the podcast that have just directly messaged me, just didn't really know. And I find that super like I don't know, it makes me feel good, you know what I'm saying?
I was really hoping so. Good.
Yeah, because
okay, awesome.
You know, just for people to be reaching out and like be interested in coming on and talking to me, it's very cool. And you're kind of an interesting person, so it helps me out on my side. So, so you said it, Cincy Mom Buds. So could you explain to me, because I did a little bit of research, so I kind of understand what it is, but could you explain to me and people watching what exactly that is and what you do for that?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and definitely real quick, just to cycle back to Sarah and Nick and all the wonderful people that we mutually, you know, that's, and you know, and I think that's what really called me to be able to reach out to you and feel comfortable sharing my story, because it's a difficult journey that I've had to walk in being a cannabis consultant and a behavior coach in Ohio. So basically what Cincy Mom Buds is a business that I started to empower other women who want to go about empowering their family holistically. So you know, we were just talking about, you know, nutrients and just changing our lifestyle a little bit. And that can be difficult, especially as moms and parents in general, because of just the daily life of, you know, having kids. It's convenient to go to McDonald's or to, you know, make quick meals, things like that. So for me, when I started my journey in recovery, which I'll get to. Yeah. I was like, there needs to be a safe space for people to be able to talk about it, which is, I love, you've got this like let's talk thing, and I'm like, yes, that's really that's really all I ever want to do, is just have conversation,
like a comfortable environment.
Exactly. And I think sometimes when we're talking about these things, people can feel like, you want them to change or do something different. It's like, if that's what you want to do, I'm just here to say, this is what's worked for me, what wasn't working for me. We're living in crazy times right now where anxiety and depression and all these things just seem to be really highlighted. And so it's like, let's talk about it. Let's figure out how to work through it together, And so that's what I wanted to do. And I had a really hard time finding places to do that when I started my journey. So I had my background's in behavioral health, so I worked with kids with autism for 9 years.
Oh wow, really?
Yeah, straight out of high school.
Really?
I was in foster care when I was a kid and things like that. So I just have always felt called to working with kids, especially kids that are labeled. And that's a whole nother soapbox. Especially when you look at through my journey, I've gotten in contact with friends in the third poorest country in Africa, Malawi.
Oh, wow.
And I mean, they have orphans for days, and there's all these families who want kids. And I'm like, in order to do this, it would be so much money.
Yeah.
When
it's crazy.
This needless suffering, right? Anyway, I digress.
So you have this, you and Tommy, your partner,
mm-hmm.
call it a church of a sort. Mm-hmm. It's Our Next Level.
Yeah, so it's a 501c3 nonprofit that federally is under as a church. So it's really interesting how Tommy and I met because, like I said, I've just really struggled with finding support as a patient and as a mom, and I've gone through a lot of this journey on my own. And so like there was this night that I was like, I'm so tired of this. And then the next day I went to the dispensary, and Tommy and he held the door open, and it was just like, woo, like this is the connection that needed to be made. And so he is a combat veteran and Marine veteran, and he started the nonprofit as a way to talk about integrative health with the community. He not specifically just veterans, but really everyone in a way that is inclusive. And so we did an event that was just really laid back, and we did like meditation and art, and it's just kind of a free flowing, come as you are, do what you need, learn about it, talk about it. Okay. What resonates, leave what doesn't, kind of thing. Cool.
Like an open forum just to be kind of yourself and allow whatever, because if everybody's going through things, you know what I mean? And just having, like you said, like a good people around you to help support that.
And people, and that's what I, throughout my journey, right? The thing that really bothered me when I started using cannabis instead of the pharmaceuticals that I was prescribed. And mind you, when I was on these pharmaceuticals, I wasn't able to get out of bed. I was really fatigued. And there's a lot of factors that go into that. But it was really hard for me to exist as a person. And then when I came off of them, and I was still struggling through, what happens when you go through recovery, detox and withdrawal and all of these things, because I didn't get any help. It was just me and making soup and doing all these things and changing my behavior and my lifestyle. And when I did that, I'm sorry, I lost my train of thought too. Look at that.
Oh, yeah.
And here's the thing is I think it's easy for people to blame that stuff on cannabis, but that is the trauma. And what cannabis does is it gets our body to homeostasis, right? Yeah. And so we're just more humans, relaxed. And we're just humans, and humans aren't supposed to be perfect. And this is, the thing with like rigidity and stuff like that is a trauma response, So for me, I like to just talk and conversate, and it'll come back or it won't.
So with cannabis, I had this little thing, this gift you gave me.
Yeah.
What did you call this?
So it's a smokeable herb blend, and what that is just, it's a bunch of different herbs, including CBD, that work together in synergy to add more of that homeostasis effect. And so it's very calming. It's just very balanced. relaxing. It chills you out. And the thing is for me, I like to be in the state because it does force me to slow down and be more mindful. Yeah. And that's where I talk about behavior skills, and that's where my behavior background comes into play, because that's what I was noticing with the kids I was working with. So they were just so sped up. Mm-hmm. And the adults around them were just trying to like bombard them with things. And I'm like, dude, let's do some deep breathing. Let's, set an intention here or something.
And at the end of the day, they're kids. I mean, allow them to be children first, and then like develop on their own and see where they get.
Right. And behavior is nonverbal communication, so it's telling you something. Always at the end of the day, and that's really what I noticed, and this is the point I was going to make, actually, is when I became a patient and I started being vocal about how this was working, how my life was changing, and I was posting about it and all this stuff, people would look at me different. They're, checking my eyes to see if they're red and talking to me slower, just changing. And
really?
That's a lot of, I think, where I get, even when I smoke, like I'll start to get a little bit more anxious because I'm afraid that I'm going to be treated differently. And that's frustrating, and it's just, that's something that's the stigma that I want to break down, because nobody does that. Like, nobody is looking at you if you're taking, I was on Adderall for years, nobody, it was cool. Like, I would just be like, oh, I took my Adderall today, so that's why I'm going 100 million miles an hour,
depression medication, like any of that stuff. It's all because and I won't sit here and say that this a lot of stuff is very useful, and to each person is their own situation.
100%.
And that for you found yours and in your way of doing things, and there's so many benefactors to every way you can possibly think of, as long as it's truthful to you. You also trying to open it up to the community to make, and I think that's very interesting and very admirable to try to, because in my opinion, everybody's a little too independent. You know what I mean? It's good to keep your shit together and make sure your room's clean or whatever, and but also go out and make sure your street's clean and and make sure that the people around you are doing good. And that's a very good mentality. And so
I always joke and I say that Jeffrey Dahmer was isolated as a child, so
absolutely.
Let's talk about that.
Yeah.
Let's not isolate. We need each other, and we need each other in love, and that's a lot of what I that's my thing. And I think that's a lot of the resistance that I've gotten in my mission, is because people assume that I'm 1,000% against pharmaceuticals and don't do the things, because that is how our culture is, right? Cancel culture, right?
Yeah, exactly. Mm-hmm.
Do things that work for you. And so for me, I was taking Adderall and benzos and drinking. That's not good. But here's the thing, is I was saying that to my doctors every time I would take the tests or whatever. When you go in, they have what's your lifestyle like, essentially, and I was like, I'm drinking 1 to 5 beers a night, and they just on top of this medication, and nobody had those conversations with me. And as a single mom without family support and all this stuff, I just don't know. And that's why I say let's talk about it. So if you're on pharmaceuticals and you're still experiencing symptoms, well, let's look at so Adderall, for instance, depletes your magnesium at rapid rates. ADHD symptoms, which is what they prescribed Adderall for, mirrors the same thing as magnesium deficiencies. So what do? Why don't we give Adderall with a magnesium supplement? Or say, hey, if you're going to take this medication, up your magnesium, because it's depleting your magnesium, which might be the cause of the symptoms in the first place. Well, so you see that cycle, and that's we talked about just changing lifestyle and how we eat differently and things like that, and that's where cannabis comes into play, because it's an anti-inflammatory. So cannabinoids actually, in their synergy, combat inflammation, and cytokine, which is that when inflammation takes over and causes disease. And these are do your own research, right? Because I'm not a doctor. These are just things that, you know, when I went through my stuff that I looked up because I
mean, the information's all available to you, too. Exactly. I mean, you can see what kind of moose herd up in Alaska if you want to. I mean, you know, if any information is available, as long as you're willing to do the mass amount of research for it.
Or
and
talk to people about it who have experienced it. I mean, and that's I think, this big thing. And that's where the church, you know, to cycle back to that, is big, and is just bringing these old, you know, things that we've seen work. You know, we know this stuff, and people know this stuff, you know, the indigenous humans and stuff. And so how do we combine that with the modern technology and with all these things? So like Tommy and I, we listen to a lot of frequency music, and that really helps like calm our anxiety,
vibrations,
exactly, all of that stuff, because there's now starting, those are old things, right, that now the science is like
and it's like, oh, it wasn't a myth, it's actually real. And another thing is like cold water and ice water. If you work out and like you strain your muscles and stuff like that, if you get in an ice bath, you're not going to be as sore the next day.
Exactly.
If you drink cold water. This is from Ronaldo, I think, it's the soccer player. If you drink cold water after that it heals your body.
Interesting.
Yeah, it's very, very interesting.
We do contrast showers a lot, and that's
what is that exactly?
So doing like a hot and then a cold.
Okay.
And so I do a lot of that, and those really help, because the hardest struggle for me has been getting a doctor or nurse to tie this to the medications that I was prescribed, because I wake up and my body is just like and I know that is from amphetamine salts that I was prescribed for years, and then coming off of them and not replacing the nutrients because I don't know what they are.
Exactly.
You know?
Yeah.
Like, I don't know what my body needs.
We're not taught any of this stuff.
Right. Like, and there's not really affordable testing for it.
Yeah.
As a single mom who, you know, my story, you know, you could check out my Instagram and see what I've been through the last couple of years. Because I was homeless. I lived in a camper. I lost jobs and all these things, just telling my story and fighting for this. And I knew that's what I would have to do. I was like, you know, if I'm going to go big, I'm going to go home, or I'm going to go big or go home. And especially right now, because we're on such a cusp of legalization. I don't know for anyone watching, cannabis was actually nationally rescheduled.
Yeah, really?
Through the UN. Yeah, the UN rescheduled it, and the U.S. voted for that rescheduling. This happened a year ago.
Okay. Very hush-hush. I did not know that.
It's like, come on. Like, we need federal legalization to just happen, and then so many things.
So we can study it for the properties and uses it can do.
Because the studies are there, though. And when you talk to people and you hear the stories, it's there.
It's not just the possible like medical properties that have been like studied in recent years, just by the states allowing, you know, it to even just medically be used, but also like the physical attributes that you, like all these different things could be made by hemp and cannabis purely. And we can make them at the masses, and they're reusable. They'll break down into the ground, and actually won't, like, it's not like plastic where it just sits in its form for thousands of years or hundreds of years, whatever.
Well, and again, like we talked about, you know, my oldest son, he had been prescribed Adderall when he was 4 years old. And, you know, we can go into the conversation of I didn't have to say yes to taking that medication and blah, 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 blah. However, I was, 17, 18, 19, I was 21. But I didn't know. Like, I had no idea. Yeah. I just, the doctor say do this, I say yes.
Exactly,
okay.
Yeah.
You know, and at this point, when you look at that amphetamine salt compared to a plant, is that you can incorporate the entire plant cannabis into your diet in order to create that balance.
Absolutely.
To be able to be that voice. I was, I think, 12 when I was in the backseat of the social worker's car on my way to my first foster home. And that's when I was like, I remember just there was so much going around me and I was like, would y'all just listen to me? Like, I'm 12, like, I'm here, I know what's going on, you know, whatever. And they just wouldn't. And I was like, you know, someday I'm going to be that voice for these kids.
And also try to build that community style, you know, even if it's small, like just having like because at that moment you felt like nobody cared. Nobody cared what you had to say, what you wanted in the situation.
And all about,
exactly.
The rules, but the rules didn't make any sense, because they weren't, exactly. It was all just not paying attention to the bigger picture, and I think that's where a lot of where they are. I love hearing people's stories. I love just talking and knowing stuff, about people. I think people are cool, and that's.
That's literally. That's exactly why I do this.
Exactly. I feel. I think it's just it's hard sometimes to break down, the social barriers and how
those weird walls. It's a thing that it's definitely a thing I've worked on the last few years. Breaking those walls down, those like social boundaries. That of all things, and I try to do it with my friends all the time. I'm like, hey man, don't sit with stuff that you're not like feeling good about, whether it's sadness, anger, like anxiety. Like, say those things out loud to people. Yep. If you think that they care enough, and like.
Well, it's hard. People don't feel like they have safe spaces, and that's where I found great support there were chat rooms. So when I started my journey, and I was meeting a lot of resistance. My family didn't understand why I was changing everything, changing the way we eat, there was just, I couldn't do stuff anymore because it would make me sick. And so it was really frustrating. And so I Googled like stoner chat rooms or something and like just hopped in the first 3 that popped up, and I found one. It was called Trees Chat. And I loved it. It was just gaming developers, just really smart people at home during COVID smoking weed in chat rooms. Like, that exists. Wow. And I was like, this is
what a time.
Amazing. I was like, this I did that a lot as a kid. I would do like Yahoo games and stuff.
I remember those. I did a little bit of that too. Well, so you say chat rooms, and another thing I want to talk to you about is, like, I did see that you do poetry.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so that's more, my writing is more flowing. I call it like visual writing is what I like to do. Okay. But yeah, I really want to focus my writing on telling other people's stories. Okay. And that's something that I'm working on right now, and something that I'm working on with Tommy and a couple other friends of mine, is just telling their stories and writing their stories out. Okay. And maybe mine, I work with a doctor. Her name's Dr. Bridget. And she just put out a book, actually, of a bunch of people's stories in the cannabis community here in Ohio. It's called Courage and Cannabis. Definitely check it out, because some of my really good friends are in there. It's the cannabis community in Ohio is such an interesting place because there is such stigma. And so people get nervous, like it's to speak up and to be loud and to talk about, these things, because you never know. I have people that say mean things to me on my Instagram. Mm-hmm. Really mean things, like nasty things about my kids. Oof. Yeah. And I've had people say, well, just make your profile private. I'm like, I don't think I should have to shut up.
Yeah, that's not how it works.
Because you're being mean. Like, I think that the way that I, like, in my little world.
You should get louder.
Yeah, that's
Exactly.
And here's the thing, that's how behavior works, right? Mm-hmm. It's called oppositional defiance. Mm-hmm. That's why when you're working with kids, if you've got a kiddo climbing on the table, you don't want to say get down, because they're going to hear, stay up here. Yeah. You want to say feet on the floor or something like that. Or don't do that. You don't want to say don't climb there, because they're like, do. I only heard the first 2 letters of that,
I try to understand that sort of stuff a little bit, like, one for like the being in entertainment, and, right? And like we make short films. I talked about that. I'll show you some after the podcast. I would love to see that. But a lot of those, they're dark. Mm-hmm. I'm gonna just be blunt with you. They're very dark. But a lot of that stuff we've based it off of and learned about different, like, sort of behavioral things like that. Mm-hmm. whether it be like we have a couple horror ones, like we kind of try to stay away from it, but just like super psychopathic, kind of like switch off, like manipulative, different sort of stuff like that.
Who writes them?
Me and Caden.
Sweet.
Yeah, you met Caden on the way through. Yeah,
cool.
Me and him, we write them for the most part, and then at least our films. It's but we do take that stance on it. Like, we try to learn about situations, why maybe people were doing that, even if it's the craziest thing you can imagine. Like, why would somebody like do that? Where did that spawn from? You know what I mean?
And I think that's a healthy outlet for those things. When we talk about mental illness or talk about, anything, a lot of that is people keeping those thoughts in their head and not having a healthy place to put them. That was the thing when I started going through, just my own therapy and things, was like, people say, like, I'm gonna beat you up all the time, or like, they joke about, oh man, it's been such a hard day, like, have somebody shoot me, like, we joke about that stuff flippantly, and then over time, though, that's where
actually turned to a reality. And
so it's like, we need healthy outlets for that. We need to be able to talk about it and not be worried that if I say, hey, I'm having a bad day, I want to hurt myself, worried that you're going to get locked up or put, in a hospital. Yeah. It's just like, having 100%. Support systems, safe spaces to be able to talk about that. Ohio has a big push right now for something called peer recovery. And it's where people who have been through therapy, who've gone through recovery processes, whether it be for substance abuse or mental illness, you can get trained to be able to help others. And I'm going through that. Tommy's going through that. We're getting our whole squad of people to go through that training, because I think it's really important to be able to connect with people and say, hey, like, I've been through this, and then say, hey, here's a friend who is making wonderful media where you can kind of talk and have these conversations and go about these things in a healthy way, and have a healthy outlet for some of your feelings, or maybe even be able to connect somewhere.
Yeah, exactly.
And then understand, moving forward from that, the healing process, and that's why I love writing so much. For me, I was, I first started writing as like an outlet in 4th grade, and I didn't have a dad growing up, and we had to write our story, and so I wrote the story about how I felt about that, and it was just so healing for me as a kid, and that's when I was like, writing for me is different. And so when it's structured and you're picking apart my words and stuff, like, I can't vibe with that always, I'm like, this is my passion, so we can pick it apart, but we just have to do it in a like nice way,
Yeah.
And because it is purely me, it is my soul, and that's the thing that with like diagnosis and things that I really wrestled with. And these are I'm touching on these topics because they're things that I want to talk about,
sure.
and if people are interested in them, they're things that I'm educated in, and I'm like, talk to me about them.
Well, my comparison to what you're saying is kind of like when you do feel those anxiety, those angry, whatever moments that you want to do out, you have those people near you that you can do that with
and help you build strategies on
well, just
what
be,
to do.
Be your full self, like allow yourself to vent per se, and because you need that first, and then which a lot of people have this problem, is being self-aware. When you say things out loud and you put them into the air, objectively look at them, because you can say, people say things in emotion all the time, but stop, look at that thing, what are you saying,
and what's it rooted
in, and ask that person, if you're say you're venting to that person I'm talking about, ask that person, hey, am I saying I shouldn't be saying, or am I correctly analyzing this? Right. And that person be honest with you and like, because you can have your own hype man, of course, but that's not necessarily good for you to just someone go, yeah, you're right all the time.
Exactly.
You need somebody to be real with you and honest about situational awareness. And
I love that you use that word.
Awesome. It helps the overall compass of like breaking down this weird human experience that we're all living.
And I think that's what I was gonna say, actually. I remembered, is that I remember arguing with my therapist at one point because she was trying to give me a diagnosis, and I was like, listen, my personality was shaped by my life. And so for you to tell me that there's a problem with that is for you to tell me there's a problem with me. I don't accept that. Like, you know, because I am who I am, and I'm actively working on, you know, building skills and strategies and, you know, doing things differently and whatever. So I don't, like, I accept PTSD, you know, because trauma is the world. But I don't accept anything else. And she agreed with me in that. Yeah. And when I broke it down, like, because again, when people know I smoke weed, they want to dumb me down or something. And I'm like, no, like, give me a second to process, again, because I have toddlers and a chaotic life and all these other external factors going on. The weed is what helps remind me to slow down, to, you know, be present and question these things and be like, hey, I don't actually feel that way about myself. You know, I don't think I'm going to take that thing, especially, you know, with what I know about behavior. And that's where I feel like I'm so blessed, is because I did get that training to know, okay, hey, you know, if I can't have that situational awareness, and if I'm doing something and I recognize it, then I'm like, okay, well, why? You know, what do I need right now? Water. You know, that's taken time for me because I was so numb for such a long time from the alcohol and the pharmaceuticals. And it took a while for me to learn these things. And that's, you know, a lot of people want just that quick fix. You know, they want to just wake up and everything be perfect. And it is not that healing, you know, it's not linear. You know, you have days where you feel things, and so if you know anything about grief and how that manifests, you know, I was spiraling and didn't know how to do anything differently. And so for me to not be numb and have to you know, feel those feelings, but now I know what to do with them. You know, I've gone through that process and written about it and done different things that I needed to do, which, you know, in our world that's like so fast paced, you know, it's just like, get over it, you know. And I'm like, no, I'm gonna sit in this and feel this and do it.
Yeah, absolutely. And you said it right a little bit ago, like, dude, just standing up for yourself and what you believe is right. I mean, yeah, you're gonna be wrong sometimes, but
for sure.
But
it doesn't, and what I do does not work for everybody.
Sit right with knowing that, like, you know, like within, you know, change. That's how you change the world. That's how you change things around you. Is that you stand up for? That's how you change your art. That's how everything becomes better. You know, and standing up for your position on things is always good, but being willing to compromise.
And that's why I love hearing other people's stories. And, you know, it's so funny, especially working in cannabis, because, you know, I start asking questions and people are like, are you the cops? Like, what are you? And I'm like, no, like, I genuinely, like,
trying to learn about people.
Have you ever been on the app Clubhouse?
No.
Oh,
what is that?
Okay.
What is that?
It's essentially like live podcasting all the time, and there's all kinds of topics. There's whatever, and it's where I really found this like global cannabis community. So I'm connected with people in California, people in Texas. Texas is down here. You know, I'm all through this app, and oh man, there's so many beautiful things that I learned there about, you know, global sustainability and regenerative agriculture and social equity. Like, that's a big topic that gets talked about on there. That I'm just like, these are things that are important, especially in cannabis, where things are so stigmatized. And I've heard just these stories, and I've talked to like growers from Humboldt County. And what they've had to go through, and women who have been, you know, had their doors knocked down, and oh my gosh, just houses raided and families raided and all this stuff over this plant.
Because unless you know, everyone's going in with a blind eye. Because like no one, like, unless the road's been laid out already, which in like examples like with what you're saying, in some states it kind of what has been laid out. You know, there's an example, but for those people, you know, back in '96 in California when medical was first legalized, they had no example except for maybe European countries that had just gotten it like a decade before. And for some
reason, we're not making those connections, and that's where I get aggravated.
It's different. Well, and it's because the world is just now kind of like over the last 100 years.
That's what they say with that federal, you know, with the rescheduling and all that stuff. I really think those walls will start to break down, and we'll be able to have those conversations on a macro level, because they are happening on Clubhouse. And I'm like, if they're happening, this is the way I think about the world, right? Like, I'm like, if we're having these conversations and we're talking about a better thing right now, like us here. It's got to be happening somewhere else. And that, because that, like you said, just sitting in it and being in it is how we change it. So
exactly,
like it's all connected.
It's standing up in the middle of it.
Yeah, exactly.
Because it may be comfortable, and like you say, we're creating comfortable environments around us, but sometimes everything goes on fire, and you got to kind of, run through that and figure it out and make it work, right. for what you're doing and what you're trying to accomplish and achieve in life.
Exactly.
That's good.
And it's never perfect. And that's, and again, that's why I've gotten frustrated sometimes, and I've been like, maybe I could do things a little bit differently and not be as forgetful or whatever. But I
write things down, honestly.
I do a lot of that too. I actually brought my computer for that reason. And I'm like, but here's the thing. I like to show up and just be authentically me and own it, because so many people, I see it, they're like, oh, why'd I say that, or why'd I do this, or da 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 da, and I'm like, because you're you. Like, just be you. Like, I love you. I think you're awesome, and unless you're being mean to me, then I really don't have a problem with anyone ever. And it's like, because I get that. Like, I get that people are people, and, you've been through shit and stuff's happened. Like, I get why people are the way they are. And that was a big thing for me as a teacher, and that's why I vibed so well with kids. I worked with a kid one time, one of my first students that I ever worked with. I've worked with hundreds of kids, and he would growl. And one time I was just like, why are you growling? Like, we can't do this growling thing. It scares people. I'm like, come on, dude. And I'm like, well, people do it. Like, people are like, oh, whatever. And he was kind of doing the same thing. It was just in excess. And he looked at me and he was like, I can't stop. And I was like, all right, well, then you need to just tell people that, and,
exactly,
and have that conversation.
Make it your thing,
And it's like, once you explain that to me, then I get it. And I'm like, all right, cool. I can work with that, now that we've had that conversation. And that's what I love about...
It's only unknown until you know it. Mm-hmm. And absolutely. I mean, you say, stand up for yourself, be yourself, and be weird.
Yeah,
and definitely. I think that's the motto of this podcast. And Lee, I just want to thank you so much for coming out. This has been
so much
nice.
Fun. Thank you.
It's been very nice.
Yeah, just shameless plug real quick. I sell teas, and I say sell, but really everything goes back into, it's all circular economics, right?
I'll take a look.
Right.
See how legit this is.
So I do the teas, I do the Smokeable herb blends, and then I also sell USDA organic CBD.
And this is all through Cincy Mom Buds?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, cool.
Yep. And then and then if you guys want to know more about the church and sacrament and things like that, check out our next level. Definitely as next year starts, we're going to be really hitting stuff. Like we've been talking some things with Sunday drives. We've been,
nice.
We just, it's all been.
We might make an appearance there. We'll come check it out. The more I'm learning about it, I'm like, okay, I might come check this out, see what this is about.
Yeah, I would love to have you at a brunch or a bonfire. And that's the thing.
I
mean, we want, I'd like, let us feed you. Like and that's the thing, like we're feeding people good food. I go to Findlay Market. I use local veggies and all the cool. We go to Jungle Gems. Like we're really conscious about the foods that we buy and the nutrients that are going into it. And if we do things like cinnamon rolls, I put hemp seeds on them,
I hope so. All these things we just talked about, I hope it'd be very nutritious and laced with a bunch of hemp seeds.
Yes, definitely.
Like on the bun? Like is it like sesame?
On the icing, yeah.
Oh Lord. All right. That's very cool.
It's how I break things down. And those are my little parenting hacks, That's and those are things we can talk about more. And
absolutely. Well,
thank you again.
You're welcome.
So much.
You're welcome back anytime. Thank you. Thank you so much, Leah. It's been great having you. You have a great rest of your day. And this has been Talking to Me, Talking to You. Thanks for watching.